Welcome to Blakemere. It's a wonderful lake in the north of Shropshire, covering about 8.4 hectares and a maximum depth of about 13.5 metres. And on a day like today, somewhere like Blakemere is a fantastic place to be. Wonderful refuge for wildlife, water birds, insects, things like that. But Blakemere is not the only lake in North Shropshire. In fact, there are a whole load of others, such as Crowsmere, Colmere, the Mere at Ellesmere. So there are many more meres besides these ones. In fact, if you take a look at the map, you get an idea of just how many dozens and dozens of these small pools there are across the North Shropshire and southern Cheshire. Now, not all of these little circles represent a single mere either. Sometimes these are clusters of them. See, there's just a huge swathe of them across the whole part of the northern county. And besides the meres that actually still have water in them, there's also several areas such as Fen Moss where there's these extensive peatlands. Now, some of these are still active peat bogs, others have been drained and put to agricultural use, but either way they've got a very peaty soil underneath them. So the question then becomes, why are there so many of these small lakes across northern Shropshire and southern Cheshire? Besides a lot of these meres, there's also small areas of raised land, such as these ones just around the edges of Ellesmere and Blakemere. And these mounds are quite commonly associated with a lot of these meres across Shropshire. So again, there's the question, why have you got these mounds that are here as well? There's also other strange lumps and bumps that you'll find across the county. Not ones quite as big as the areas that you'll see around Blakemere and Ellesmere, but you'll see smaller rolls and lumps within the fields as you go around the county. And this is another clue as to what has happened here within the north part of Shropshire. One of the key features of geology is, as Charles Lyell put it in his book, The Principles of Geology, is that the present is the key to understanding the past. So, where do we see these kind of features elsewhere in the world? Well, besides the meres and the Kames that you'll find up near Ellesmere, there are lots of other lumps and bumps around the county that are all the remains of glacial deposits from the Devensian. Hold on, glaciers in Shropshire? Yes. And there's quite some compelling evidence to show that this landscape was once covered in ice. If we look at Scotland, you'll find areas such as up here in Rannoch Moor or parts of the Northwest Highlands where you've got similar lumps and bumps in the ground. You also have similar small pools. You also find similar features in places like Iceland and Austria. And in the case of Iceland and Austria, there's glaciers at the end of those valleys. Glaciers aren't the nice, pristine, clean ice that most people think they are. They're really quite dirty. They've got a lot of sediments in there from where they've eroded away the sides of hills. They've got larger lumps of rock that you'll find forming glacial erratics. In other parts of the world where there's volcanic activity like Iceland, you also get a lot of volcanic ash on top of them. I'm on top of Lythe Hill, just south of Shrewsbury, and you can see within this fantastic landscape of the Shropshire Hills. Got some great little lumps and bumps in the ground in front of me. Now, you should just be able to make it out in the tree line. We've got a linear structure that's known as an esker. So what is an esker? An esker is the remains of a subglacial river. So whilst you have meltwater running across the top or sometimes through glaciers going down holes called melans, and they will run through the ice or sometimes through the very base of the glacier. Now they will carry with them sediment that's been eroded from the sides of the glacier and sediment that's been contained within the ice that the water itself has eroded away. Now this sediment will often backfill the channel, blocking it up, and particularly if you get a end of the meltwater, say during the winter months, the sediment will backfill these channels, and as the glacier melts, it will drop the sediments in that rough linear line that you'll get. So we've got a fantastic example here just south of Lyell Hill of Inesca within the county. Now these lakes that form the meres are what is called a kettle hole. So what exactly is a kettle hole and how does it form? Glaciers really aren't very clean. They carry a lot of debris and sediment from the landscape that they've eroded away, and for stuff that has fallen on top of the glacier. As the glacier retreats, when it melts, it drops a lot of this sediment all over the place, and large chunks of ice fall off the ice front. And often these are covered in sediment and dirt that covered the glacier and was inside the glacier. And the ice obviously takes up the space of this. As the ice melts, the sediment above it starts to collapse inwards, and you end up with these wonderful depressions in the landscape, which over time fill up with water, both from rainfall and from glacial melt, and makes these wonderful kettle holes, which in North Shropshire are called the meres. Mounds of earth around them are called kames. Now, often they're associated, the two come together, the kettles and the kames come together. So when referring to a glacial landscape, we tend to refer to it as a kettle and kame post-glacial landscape. And these kames are also the result of the melting of the glacier. And the glacier won't melt evenly all over. And you'll get chunks of it that will melt quicker than others. And as these sections melt away, any sediment and any water flowing over the top of it tends to form into these hollows. So you end up with a collection of sediments in the glacier itself or on top of the glacier itself. And then as the ice fully retreats and it completely melts away, these chunks of sediment get dropped pretty much in place to form a large mound. And as a final piece of evidence that Shropshire was once encased in ice, we have the discovery of the mammoths in a kettle hole in Condover, just south of Shrewsbury. Now there's a replica mammoth in the Shropshire Hills Discovery Centre. Replica mammoth in the Shropshire Hills Discovery Centre in Craven Arms. We also see the remains of actually parts of the actual fossils in the Shrewsbury Museum. And a fantastic example, and the most recent fossil mammals found in the UK. There's features that we've gone over in today's episode. Hummocks, kames, kettles, and escas are all examples of depositional features within the glacial landscape. Now in the next episode, what I want to look at is some of the erosional features that you'll find from the Ice Age within Shropshire.